ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Well, hey there, this is Matt Petrowski bringing you these FileMaker tutorials from my website, FileMakerMagazine.com. In this video tutorial, what we're going to be taking a look at is securing barcodes. Now, FileMaker doesn't have a barcode generator, but it's very easy to generate barcodes. There's some free options that are out there. Of course, there are some paid options, but we're going to take a look at how you can secure that information within the barcode and see how it might meet your requirements. Alright, so thanks for joining me on my desktop. We have a file here, a FileMaker file. Of course, if you are a paid subscriber of ISO FileMaker Magazine, you will have access to this file, but I will be showing you everything in this video that I use, and you can certainly wire this up yourself. So let's get started. What we have on screen is a FileMaker file, and first off, let me explain the situation. Let's say, for example, you are going to be using barcodes. In this case, I have a QR code that we have quite obviously right here, because a QR code will hold a lot more information, and you want to use those barcodes for, let's say, an event. You're going to plan a conference, or maybe it's a concert, or maybe there's even a legal document that you have that you want to put a barcode on there that makes it easy for you to retrieve information. So the scenario would be this. You put the barcode on an invoice or something, the customer signs it, you want to bring that invoice back, and for some reason you want to know whether that invoice has been modified. Of course, they could still modify the invoice values, but you could put the value in the barcode itself and verify that. That is essentially what we're taking a look at. We're taking a look at being able to have information in the barcode, but also being able to secure that against the information in your database so that you know that nothing was modified about the barcode or what the barcode contains. So first we need to have a barcode in our FileMaker system, something that will generate a barcode, and for that I'm going to point you to something that is absolutely free and came out recently from a friend of mine, Hansa Kudelka from 2-4U. So let's take a look at that. All right, so here is a file that was recently released by 2-4U software. The gentleman's name is Hansa Kudelka, who runs this. He's been in FileMaker for a long time. And first, the reason I'm showing you this is because in this file, he's got a good representation of all of the different types of barcodes as I select and scroll up and we take a look. So first off, if you don't know, there are two types of barcodes. Primarily, there is one-dimensional barcodes, which is everything that I'm highlighting right now. Then there is two-dimensional barcodes that we have right here. Now, without going into all of the details of how the barcodes work, just know that these are going to typically hold less information than these right here. In fact, with some of these, you can hold a lot of information, QR codes in particular. And QR codes came out about 1994, I think. But a lot of the times, if you're just looking for static information that you want to barcode something, let's say a piece of inventory or anything that's going to have some type of just fixed value like a number, then all of these, and pretty much each of them is respective of whatever industry they came out of. You can do research on your own. In fact, Hansa has a really great little information feature here where, for example, I can select on Codabar, and then I can select on this little eye, and what will happen is it will bring up information about Codabar, and it will give you a bunch of references. So you don't even have to do the research yourself. You can just click on the links that Hansa provided here. It is a wonderful file. It is freely available, and it does not use any technologies other than custom functions. So all of these custom functions within Hansa's file will all generate a barcode within FileMaker, and it does it as a PDF, which is scalable, which is really pretty cool. Now, the difficulty that you have in some of those scenarios is integrating that barcode into your other printed document. Now, in the way that it's generated as a PDF, you can have that container available on any other FileMaker layout. It can be in the bottom corner, anywhere that you want. And then you can put all of your other information, and it will print just fine. In fact, it'll print really super small in terms of the file size. The one downside that we have to barcodes generated purely with FileMaker code is that FileMaker, unfortunately, is slow. There's so many levels of abstraction that it gets the more information you have, the slower it gets. So For all of our single dimension or 1D barcodes, these are all perfectly acceptable and really fast. But as I'm going to be showing in this video, something like a QR code, if you've got a lot of information, it gets a little bit slow. Let's take a look at that. Here's some of the information that I'm going to be showing you throughout the remainder of this video, something that includes a security check, which I have highlighted. Now, the information I'm storing in this barcode is JSON, and it's just because JSON is convenient. It's got a nice compact format, and it basically identifies or serializes all of the information. Well, let me post that in here. We'll switch to the QR code here for, not PDF, for 417. We'll put the barcode data in, and then I'm going to click the generate button. Now, I have a pretty fast computer. I have it's a 9th generation i9 CPU. I click generate, and notice that what's going to happen here is we're going to get the lollipop of death here on the Macintosh. And that's because of the time that it takes in order to generate the error correction and the rendering. Just this little bit of information takes a lot of time when you're using pure FileMaker custom functions. It's just one of the downsides. But if we are going to generate something, say, like 1, 2, 3, 4, heck, a lot of numbers, and we're going to go with something like a UPC-A, we click generate, it will be instantaneous on any one of these, a code 128. It's just super quick. So I highly suggest that if you need to generate barcodes, go ahead and grab a copy of this. Let's switch over to Safari. Here is the URL that you can use in order to go grab that. I have it at 2for-you software.com/news/generate scalable PDF barcodes. And the reason I'm showing you this URL is I really couldn't find it predominantly listed on the 2for-you website. Maybe they'll actually change this, but this long URL is what you need to use in order to access that. And of course, I'll put a link on this article website. But when I went to the tools section here, I didn't find the PDF, and it may just be that they don't have it actually linked. But that's how you're going to get access to that file. You just put in your email address, and then you get access to all of these barcodes really quickly and really fast. Now, moving on. What is the fastest way to generate a QR code? And then let's get to that security aspect that I'm talking about. And we're going to cover that right now. All right, so now let's get to the good stuff. How can we generate barcodes within FileMaker? Do it easily, free, and quickly, super quickly. In fact, the amount of information that you can put into a QR code is really quite extensive. Now, for the longest time, you have been able to use JavaScript, and this is even prior to FileMaker 19, when they released the bi-directional aspect of FileMaker. You were able to generate a barcode. Now, what I have in this file, I'm going to show you, for me, is one of the easiest ways to generate a barcode. Now, how you implement your JavaScript is going to be up to you, but I tend to like to put things off onto the side. Number one, the reason is I don't have to go in and escape quotes. So each of these quotes that we see right here surrounding object, if I put that into a calculation, I have to escape those because this whole block of text has to be enclosed within quotes. So what I tend to do is I tend to take the JavaScript and just directly paste it into a text object. There's another reason for that. FileMaker's calculation dialog boxes limit you in terms of the total number of characters that you can store. So many times a JavaScript library is super large. But just to get you going, to show you how easy this is, there's only 3 things that I need to copy to get this into another FileMaker file and have it work perfectly. That is, select the web viewer, select this text block, and this text block. 3. That's it. I copy these 3 things, paste them into my FileMaker solution, and it will just work. The rest of what you need to know is how you can modify this to fit your particular circumstances and requirements. So let's go over this. There was, back in 2017, which is when I originally shot this video, a library called Curious is probably how you pronounced it, but QRIOUS. It has not moved forward since that point in time, and let me give you some of the caveats to using this particular library. It does not support Unicode, and it does not go, in other words, you can't use UTF-8 characters or UTF-16, which is what FileMaker is. if you're wanting to support things like emojis and certain Asian languages. You're just not going to be able to do it. But if you're in the lower level of ASCII characters, you're going to be completely fine. Also, the implementation that I'm going to be showing you in the rest of this video, it's such that you have to know that when you're putting things in a format for JavaScript to evaluate, it's possible to break things. And I'll show you where this would break. But in most situations, we're not too worried about that. So in this database, I have two fields. I have a first name and I have a last name. And of course, on this database, I also have an ID field. I always have a primary key that I put in most all of my solutions, which is an auto enter, which in most cases uses getUUID, which is a text field as opposed to a number field. A number field, FileMaker does have a function in later versions of FileMaker called getUUID number. And if you are creating a super big database that's going to get a lot of activity, I would tend to go with the number. Even though the number is longer, it gets stored as quicker to retrieve. So with these three pieces of information, the web viewer, this block of text, and this block of text, let me explain. This is our library, and then this is our text that's actually going to render the QR code. Now, all of this is happening within a web viewer, as we can see right here. So this web viewer, the QR code is going to be rendered. It is doing it within a canvas. An HTML5 canvas can only create an image type. It does not create a scalable vector type of QR code. Although at the end of this video, I will show you something that I've found that is an updated, different library which will do that. So, knowing that, all we have to do is generate a barcode that's not small, but is large enough that when printed, it will be just fine. And those barcodes are actually really small. So, first off, we have the web viewer. The web viewer has a name. In this case, I've called it barcode. In some instances, you need to refresh this. The canvas that the JavaScript populates with the barcode, that data can be retrieved into FileMaker into a container field. So the container field that I have right here, the way that I'm getting this back is I am in FileMaker 19 using the perform script, the FileMaker.perform script function that FileMaker built into FileMaker 19. Now, if you're using a copy of FileMaker prior to FileMaker 19, it is still possible to get that data out. However, the downside is on Windows, you're going to be limited in terms of the amount of information that can be transferred through a URL. So, on versions prior to FileMaker 18, going to the Manage Security and then taking a look at the privilege set, you need to know this. If you wanted to be able to pass the data from the web viewer in a more recent version of FileMaker, you're going to have to turn on this one right here, allow URLs to run FileMaker scripts. So, prior to FileMaker 19, you were able to, within a web viewer, just run JavaScript and then execute a URL, and that URL makes a call to a FileMaker script, passing it the information that you need in order to put it into a container, which is base 64. Don't worry, we'll be looking at this. This is what's necessary if you're using a version of FileMaker 18 or higher, I believe, but yet you're not using FileMaker 19. So that's pretty much, it may be 17, it may be 18. And you would use a URL in order to get that data back. On Macintosh, everything's rosy. On Windows, you're going to have a limitation in terms of the size of the URL. I can't go into it. You'll have to use the clipboard. There are some techniques. Do a search on Google for JavaScript, FileMaker, clipboard, Windows. That combination of keywords should get you some articles. In FileMaker 19, as I type my password there, we do need to be aware that the web viewer itself in FileMaker 19 and higher must have this option selected right here. Allow JavaScript to perform FileMaker scripts. So you must put that individually on the web viewer if you're going to allow the web viewer to call back out to perform a script. So that does need to be on. Of course, if you select just these three things, copy to your own file, that option will already be turned on. So what we need to do is we simply need to load this library and our code. And we'll be going over the code shortly, but let's take a look at the web viewer. The web viewer, when we click on specify, is going to be super straightforward. This is what I love about how easy it is to get things in using my particular method of implementation. We have a list function, which is simply returning HTML. We have an open HTML, our opening and closing head, and our opening and closing body. That's the rough skeleton of a document object within HTML. We are at the top going to load the library of Curious. I'm using the minimized version. And then at the bottom, just before we close out the body, we are going to be running our JavaScript that generates the code and then allows us to get the code out of the web viewer and into our container. Everything else is completely up to you. Now, I did do a few things here. We put a border of 0 on the body. We put a margin of auto, which is going to allow us to then use text align and center that barcode. And then I've also used a background color, as we can see right here, that matches the background of my FileMaker database. Now, as we're going to see in the barcode itself, you are able to control the foreground color, the background color, and even the opacity. So if you were to overlay your FileMaker container on top of other text, you would be able to make the barcode itself translucent if you wanted to, or you're able to put objects in front of that barcode, and because of the error correction in a QR code, you will be able to basically have that barcode be personalized with custom graphics, etc. Notice that we're running these within just simple script tags, and that's how we're executing our code. Now again, what I love about this technique is the fact that I can use a merge value. So when we look at our code, which we can see right here, our code has been given the name of text.qr.js. That's our JavaScript code. The library has been given the name curious.min.js. I just copied it from the name of the file when I downloaded it. When we look at this code that's actually running our JavaScript code, it is pretty simple in terms of how it works. So we are creating a variable called QR. We are creating a new curious object. That object has some things that we need to address. In other words, where is this going to be within the HTML? Well, the element right here is saying we're going to get that element by QR. Let's take a quick look at where that is. Scrolling over, we can see in our content that we have specifically created a canvas HTML tag. That canvas HTML tag has a absolutely unique ID of QR. So this is where the connection comes from. When our JavaScript runs, it says, out of all of this, I need to look for an object. It is going to be an object that has this ID of QR. It happens to find a canvas tag, and then within that canvas tag, it builds its barcode and then pushes it right here. That's why this currently is empty. So there's nothing within this particular canvas tag until the JavaScript runs, and then when it does, it puts the QR code right within there. Then all we have to do is get it out. So let's take a look at that. The grabbing it out part comes a little bit later on, so let's talk about our settings for this particular item. We know that we're identifying that canvas based on the QR. We are passing in the value of a merge value. Now this is what I love. By putting all of my JavaScript code in a text block, all I have to do in order to get my code into this JavaScript code is simply just use a FileMaker merge value, and that's it. You're also going to see a little bit later down that I'm also able to use FileMaker's merge symbols in order to do things such as determine whether or not I'm working within a current version of FileMaker. So here are options for this particular barcode. We can set the background. This can be a hex color, or it can be something as simple as one of the designated colors that is supported by HTML, such as white, a name, in other words. We also, there's 6 of those there. Yeah, I put those back. We also can change the background. Any alpha color typically ranges between 0 and 1. In other words, if you want 50%, you're going to put 0.5. For our foreground color, we've got whatever we want here. Notice that the background, I am currently setting it to transparent. I'm setting it to 0 right now, which allows me, when the PNG or JPEG is generated and I grab that back into my container field, I'm able to overlay the barcode on pretty much anything if I put that container on top of things. Foreground and the foreground alpha. The MIME type. So in other words, there's pretty much two that we can specify. It can either be a PNG or it can be a JPEG. Really, the only time that you need a JPEG, which is going to be a lossless format, is if it's super, super large. But in most cases, we only need it to be large enough that at the printed resolution, it will print just fine. And for the most part, a size of 1000 is going to be just fine. I think that translates to 13 inches or something like that. I think 300 would be a 4-inch sized barcode. And of course, in a container, because we can size and scale that down, the largeness of the image we can make super small, and we get really high resolution quality. Padding is just going to be the area around the barcode if you want to add some. In most cases, we don't. And then we also have our error correction. And the error correction comes in the form of these three formats. It is low, medium, quartile, and then high. If you leave this on high, it's really not that big of a difference between medium and quartile. This all depends on how much do you believe that the barcode could potentially be destroyed. With low, I believe, having a 7% rate of being able to correct if 7% of the barcode was destroyed. And with high, I believe it's like 30% can be destroyed and the barcode is still readable. Meaning if it was like a sticker and you ripped off a third of it. With a high error correction, you would be able to still read that barcode. So the following code is basically here for me to check whether or not the user has FileMaker 19 installed. And I have, in this version, I've chosen not to add the ability to execute a FileMaker URL. I have older videos which you can search the website which teaches you how to do that, but in essence you would call a FileMaker URL by saying I want to call FMP. And as a FileMaker 18 and 19, you can actually call a specific version, such as FileMaker 18 versus 19. But in general, you can call FileMaker, and then you will use the $ for the current file. Otherwise, you would need to know the IP address of where the file is hosted. And then essentially, you get down to the name of the file, which you can also merge in if you wanted to. I could put in file name as a merge value, and then I would have a question mark, and then I would have script equals to, and then I would have the name of my script. And that would also, you would also pass a parameter with that as well, which would be @param, and it would have the data that you want to pass, which would be the barcode. This is where this method was the only method available to us prior to FileMaker 19, and on Windows we have the shortcoming where the URL can only pass so many characters. But in essence, you would create that as a URL, something like var URL is equal to FMP, and then on the next line you would have something that would look like this. You would have a location Href, which you're basically telling the web viewer, the window of the web viewer, you're going to go to a different URL. That URL that you're going to go to is actually going to call FileMaker. So you would end up saying something like that right there, location Href URL. Again, if you need this full type of information about using that older method prior to FileMaker 19, you can go search the magazine website and look for those videos. But in this situation, what I've done is I am merging in the FileMaker version number, which in this case comes out like Pro Advanced, and then it has 19.2.1, which I believe is one of the most recent. Well, we need to get that down to just the 19 portion to know which version we're working with. So you can see right here that I'm using a JavaScript function of split, and I'm splitting it based on the space that we have right here between those values. JavaScript is 0 based, so this would be value 0 within the array, and this would be value 1. So I end up with 19.2.1 in this case. And then all the way down here, we have a parse int. And the parse int is just going to say it's going to make that 19.2.1 into just a pure 19, making it into a number. And then I'm able to do my logic right here that says if we are using a version that is greater than or equal to 19, then we're going to do some extra stuff. That extra stuff is we are going to create a payload variable. We're going to say what is the name of the script that we want to capture. If you have a different name script, you would change this here to whatever the name of the script is. I am going to keep mine called capture because that's the name within this file. And then here is the magic right there. This converts what is in the HTML5 canvas, and it converts it into a base 64 chunk of text. Now in FileMaker, we have FileMaker functions that will convert that text or all of that base 64 back into the image. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're saying, here's the image, take it off of that QR object that we created all the way up at the top up here, right there, and convert it into base 64. And then we are going to create a function, or we're creating a function called getBarcode. GetBarcode as a function is calling FileMaker's perform script, and it's passing in the name of the script from the payload, and then it's also passing in the image right there. Once it gets into our FileMaker script, we can do whatever we want, and that comes in the form of setting our field of our container to the actual barcode. So let's take a look at that. We'll look at the script, and then we will start to wrap things up, and I'll show you that file that I mentioned that does support UTF-16, emoji characters, and vector-based. Actually creating an SVG. It's pretty cool stuff. Before we do that, though, we need to go into the security part of this video. So let's head into talking about that. All right, so it took us a little bit of time, but I wanted to make sure and give you all of the details so that you understand how the barcode is actually being generated and how we're getting it into FileMaker. Now, the way that the barcode is getting into FileMaker is I've taken the easy way about this. I'm not using a button. I'm simply using the on record commit. So we'll go into layout mode really quickly here. We'll go up to the layouts. We'll go to the layout setup that we have right here. We'll bring that on screen. We'll look at our script triggers, and you can see that I'm using an on-record commit script trigger that as soon as you've made all the data changes that you're going to make, when the record gets committed, we are going to get the barcode. And when we take a look at the get barcode script, we are going to see that it is just doing a few things. It is simply going to set that web viewer of barcode. It's going to reset. This is going to refresh the JavaScript and update the barcode based on the changes we've made in the fields. Then it's going to perform the JavaScript in the web viewer. And again, I should probably put wrapping right here that says something to the effect of if get platform version, if application version, and then we would say something to the effect of, I'd need to convert this again. We would select all of this. We say get as number. There we go. Put that in right there is equal to, equal or greater than, which we can say greater than equal to 19. And that's when we would actually perform the JavaScript. So I need to test this, but that in essence is what we would do. So in this case, we're performing a JavaScript within the web viewer. The object we're running it on is the web viewer called barcode. And what's the function name? Well, it's just called barcode, get barcode, just as I named it. We're not passing anything in. That is what calls the get barcode. Now the get barcode is actually running what script? Well, it's running the capture. And we can see the capture right there is simply just going to take the inbound script parameter. So the inbound script parameter is this long string that includes the MIME type, the fact that it's base 64 encoded, and then all of the text. And all of the text is simply separated by a comma. So we can see right here, I am substituting all of that image data at the comma and then grabbing them into the top parts. The MIME type up at the top, and then the data, and then finally we're just setting the field to use FileMaker's base 64 decode, which JavaScript encoded the barcode from the canvas for us, and we're simply setting that into the container field. And I'm just using the generic name of image.png. Remember, if you do change the MIME type within the JavaScript to a JPEG, you will need to rename the corresponding image type that goes into your container in order to keep things consistent. But that's pretty much how simple it is to get the barcode in. It's why I love being able to copy those three parts. But let's talk about the security. So within security, all you need to do within your database is have something that is secret. So within the realm of encryption, they have these things known as adding salt to a particular password before you're going to hash it. Now, in database systems where they are salting a password, they're attempting to protect that password with a value, and that salt is oftentimes random. In this case, I'm using what's known as a fixed salt. In other words, this is a value that only my software knows, and you're going to add that in to your known data values. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Right here, I have some JavaScript or some JSON, and this JSON is including this field or this value called check. So where is that value coming from? It's actually this one right here. And I want this to go into the barcode because this value means that when I generate the barcode with my secret. And then when I scan the barcode, I take all of the information that's in that barcode, I mix in my salt or my fixed salt, which is my secret, and then check whether or not it checks out. If it does check out, then that means that this is a genuine, authentic barcode that came from my software. If it doesn't check out, then that means that somebody tried to generate a barcode without the right secret value, and it's a bogus barcode. And you know whether it's good or bad, and when you scan that, if somebody tries to get into your conference with a barcode that they made, you can say, I'm sorry, this isn't an authentic barcode. So let's take a look at how that breaks down. If we look at our database and we go to our barcode data field, we can see what I have done here in terms of how we are generating the signature, which is this check value. So you can see right here, I'm taking my data. You can use whatever pieces of data you want to use. In this case, I'm choosing to use the ID, which uniquely identifies the record. And the reason that's good is because with that ID, I can instantly perform a lookup. It is absolutely unique to each record. I get the ID and I can look it up. What's the data that I want to use in order to validate or carry along within the barcode that allows me to make a determination? Either based on the check value or what have you. In this case, I chose the combination of the first name and then also the last name as we see right here. Now, these three pieces of information, and again, you can use as many pieces of information that you want, are simply my way of saying it's going to be the combination of the ID, the first name, and the last name. Now, you have to be aware that the way that you combine it is important. You have to do it both on the generation side and then also on the scanning side. If you do it differently on one of the two sides, then it won't work. So in other words, I'm using the list function right now, which list is putting returns between each of the values. If you don't want returns between each of the values, you can just simply use FileMaker's straight concatenation character. It really doesn't matter. The only reason that we're combining all of this data is just for the purpose of making the check value. So the fact that I'm using return characters using the list function, for me, is just a coding convenience of being able to use the list function and making readable code. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter whether I use a space character, returns, or just combine the data directly to itself. But what we can see is the next step in the equation is to generate a signature. This signature is calling a custom function called signature, and it's taking my inbound data. But let's go take a look at that custom function called signature. As I open up the custom functions and we look at the signature, what we're going to see is that we are using FileMaker's functions of the base64 encode, RFC, when we're using the what I call the constant format. It's a format that doesn't have any line breaks within it. We're using the crypt digest. We're taking the inbound data and we are concatenating to that our secret. So what is our secret? Our secret is just the value that we want to use that stays completely internal to our solution. Now, the question you may have is, can I have multiple secrets? Yes, you can. Can you have multiple secrets within FileMaker fields? Yes, you can. Can you encrypt the secret so that the secret wouldn't be exposed as a readable field within the database? Yes, you can. All of that is just an extra amount of effort that you need to put on this as a layer. In this situation, we can see that for my secret, I just typed in a bunch of random characters. And this can literally be whatever you want it to be. The length doesn't entirely matter, but it really just depends on what degree of security you're actually thinking of. I wouldn't put a single character, but just because you go for a super long value doesn't make it more secure. The hashing algorithms and the combination of all of your content is what's making it secure, not necessarily the length of this value. Although I wouldn't do a 1, 2, or 3 value, I just put in whatever you want, or if you want something that makes sense. For the most part, all you need to know is that this is going to stay secure, your secret. The way it stays secure in FileMaker is our setting down here. Only accounts assigned full access privileges will ever be able to see the result or even the name of the secret function, but yet it can be used in the rest of FileMaker. So this is what I like about this solution. And you can also see that I've put in some information if you want to go look at salts and read more up about salts and how they're used in a database, rainbow tables, hackers, and how they basically go after databases. It's all good information. So our one custom function of signature, the reason I used a custom function is because the custom function is used both on the generation side, but then also on the capture side. When I capture something, when I capture a barcode using an iPhone, then I scan that, then what's going to happen is I am going to generate that signature based on the data that comes out of the barcode, and if it matches what I have stored in the record, then it's both the check that yes, this is a good scan because I know that it was generated by my database and the information can match. Now, of course, your names could change. I could change my name from Petrowski with a Y to Petrowski with an I, but that name change still doesn't impact the fact that the barcode contains the check value that includes my secret that only my software knows. And that, in essence, is how we are going to make our solution work. So, at this stage, we've gotten our barcode. We've created, with a secret, our check value. We're putting that in JSON into a barcode that's being generated by a JavaScript library that, by the way, is extremely hyper fast. We are taking that barcode and grabbing it into a container by converting the canvas into its PNG or JPEG equivalent, putting it into a container. We're now able to put this container on any other layout, overlay it, or even put graphics on top of it because the error correction will handle part of that fact if you want to put in those customization aspects. The remaining part of the equation is simply the scan barcode, and here we can just walk through the script pretty simply. First off, we're only going to run the script if we are on iOS. That's currently what's supported. And we are going to use the insert from device. We are going to grab the barcode. That's going to go into a scan field, which is a global. If it's text, it'll capture the text. If it's a container, it'll capture the image. You can see that my resolution is small because I really don't need that. I'm only using the camera for the purpose of capture. If I don't get an error based on the capture, I now need to pull the JSON out. I'm first of all going to take what I call the easy way out. I know that FileMaker's get element functions are going to refer to a JSON value, so I'm simply going to create a variable called JSON, capture the contents of that scan, which is hopefully a JSON value, which you're going to see we're going to check down here if it matches our requirements. Grab out the ID, the check value, the first name and the last name, and whatever data it is that you're wanting to grab out. Next, I'm going to say, if I do not have all of the values that I need, if the ID is empty, the check is empty, the first name or the last name, there's no point in continuing. I'm going to exit out of this script. Next up, everything looks like it's kosher. I've got my ID, I've got the check value, and I've got the name. let's go ahead and locate the record. So by performing a simple find and restoring, when we take a look at this, we can see that I'm simply saying I want you to find where the ID is matching the ID that I pulled out of the JSON. That record is located, and if that is the case, in other words, if I have a found count of 1, and the ID happens to match the ID that is in the barcode, that means I'm on the right record. That's when I'm going to verify. And here's where we have the other side. The generation side used the signature custom function, and the capture side is now going to use the signature function. It's combining in the secret that's never exposed in my code. It's all within the custom functions. And if the verification matches the check, as we see right here, the scan was good. Otherwise, it's a bogus barcode, and you get to decide what you want to do at these 2 points in terms of whether you boot that conference attendee who tried to sneak into your conference or not. So that's what we have for how you can generate QR codes, put security in those QR codes, and then be able to have your system use barcodes really easily with your iOS devices or Android, which may be coming up pretty quick according to some of the news that FileMaker's been putting out. So if you've stuck around this long, then let me show you the file that I will include as an attachment on the article page if you're a subscriber and you want to use this particular technique. I've implemented it and taken it directly from the website, where it is MIT released open source. You're able to use it commercially, what have you, and it does vector-based barcodes as well as support for Unicode. So it's a really nice benefit. I just didn't take the time to work up a file yet, but I may do that in the future. So let's take a look at that and wrap this video up. All right, so here we go. Here is an updated library that I will probably be using in my FileMaker files moving forward. Curious has actually solved a lot of needs that I have had, but there are times when I want to generate a barcode and I want that barcode to be a SVG or a scalable vector graphic. So what we see right here, we've got Nayuki.io page QR code generator library. So when I click on this and it brings up my Safari browser, what I've done for you is I have simply adapted his code and put it all into FileMaker self-contained. We can see right here that when you select in this area and you start to type whatever you want, hello world, you can see that as I type, that barcode is just automatically generated right here. And the options that you have are pretty much the same thing as all other QR code generators. We have our error correction of low, medium, quartile, and high. We can switch that to high, but here is our big benefit, bitmap and vector. So as soon as we switch to vector, this is now generated as an SVG. And as we scroll down, there's all the SVG code right there. I can get this code out of a web viewer into my FileMaker database and store this within a field, making this a really flexible solution for being able to have a version of a barcode stored in a very lightweight, transportable manner that can also then be rendered, and you can then make it a PNG or a JPEG if you want once you've stored that SVG code. This is a really awesome solution, and what I've done here is I will make this file available. I simply just copied everything from that page, including the few libraries that, the one library that's needed and his own sample code. And you can see right here within FileMaker that as I type, I get a barcode, and it's all updating right there. This is so cool. And the fact that I can, right within FileMaker, switch this to a vector, and then the fact that I can get this data out, which I can with FileMaker 19's perform script, is just a really awesome solution. So I'll give you a quick glimpse right here how quick and easy it is. Again, using the same format that I did before. In order to copy this to my file, it is simply select this web viewer, this, and then that. I just added one other thing. Of course, I wouldn't be using, this is all the HTML taken from his website of the form that allows you to see all of the features of the QR code. I would customize my code to fit my specific needs. But there is the library. It's actually just these two things, and then his sample code. But in essence, just like with our Curious, we would need our code, the library, and of course a web viewer. But look how simple that is on the web viewer. It is basically, you've got your head tags, your body tag. In this case, I'm grabbing the form, then I'm grabbing his library, and then here is his sample code, and that's it. That's how simple it is to generate those codes, and you use FileMaker Perform Script, you're off to the races. So that's what I have for this particular video. I hope it has helped you understand more about FileMaker. If you're watching this video on YouTube and you found this video helpful and you'd like more FileMaker information, feel free to check out FileMakerMagazine.com. You can also click subscribe and give me a thumbs up here. If you have any feedback or comments, you can leave those down below. Otherwise, I'm going to wish you much luck with your own FileMaker development, and until next time, happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.